I'm Sarah, a tutor at Accountancy Learning, and in this video I'm taking you through the Business Awareness AAT Sample Paper 1 Task 1. So Task 1 is all about organisations and ethics for accountants. Now just to draw your attention here to the fact that in your exam you will have a references section and there will be an extract of the AAT Code of Professional Ethics available to you. This is worth remembering as you may be able to find some helpful information within that Code of Ethics. Moving on to the first question then. Identify whether each of the following statements is true or false. So the first one then, private limited companies can be owned by individual people, trusts, associations and/or other companies. So to be a private limited company we need to have shareholders, and the shareholders can be any of these. So that would make our statement true. For the second one, a sole trader business operates as a separate legal entity from its owners. So we're looking at a sole trader and being a separate legal entity. So a sole trader is not a separate legal entity because they would need to register as a company to be separate. So a sole trader is actually liable for all debts of the business as well. So that would make this statement false. Part B then. So in this question we need to identify which one of the following structures is suited to an organisation which runs regional projects with a centralised head office function. So we're given three options to choose from: functional, divisional and matrix. So a functional one is essentially divided into functions or skills. So that would be like your sales, your finance, HR, production, and I'm sure there's loads more in different businesses. Your divisional then is more suited to larger organisations, but they might have divisions in different locations or indeed countries. And then a matrix means that individuals would be in their own departments but they work across teams on projects. So going back to our question then, we're looking for a structure that would be suited to an organisation that runs regional projects. So for that then, we are going to be looking at a matrix because they are working in their own individual departments, but they work across, they collaborate in order to complete a project. Next then we have three statements and we need to identify which type of control is described by each of them. So for the first one then, a manager has a high number of employees under their direct control. So if a manager has a high number of employees that they are in charge of, that they manage, that means that they have a wide span of control because there's lots of people that they manage, and maybe they manage people that do different projects, different tasks, different jobs. Maybe they're not just in one particular department or function. The second one, decision making and control, is delegated to managers at lower levels in the organisation. So when decisions is done at lower levels, it means that managers can manage their own teams or departments or functions of the business. So it means that it isn't managed all in one place, it's managed at lower levels. So we will call that decentralized control. So there's not just one place that is controlling the decisions. And then the last one then is the organisation has less flexibility but a higher level of control over decision making. So when there's a high level of control over decision making, it means that it's normally higher levels of management that have the control, which means it's centralised. So if you can imagine, you have a higher level of management in head office, for example, and then the control over the decisions is made by them, and then the other staff are expected to implement the decisions. So for that one, we would be doing centralised control. We are now moving on to the next question, which has got a fair amount of information. So let's have a look at what we are told. HTR Limited is a private school for children aged 4 to 6 years old. Florence Granger is the sole owner and principal, and a team of teachers work at the school full-time, and there are 3 part-time administrative staff and 2 part-time cleaners and gardeners. The school is regulated by Ofsted, which is the government agency responsible for regulating the school, which undertakes regular inspections and sets guidelines for the activities the children should complete daily. The school has funds to invest, and there's 2 options available. So we're looking at expanding the sports hall and adding new equipment, or upgrading the computer facilities. Again, just to bring to your attention, in your exam you will have a little box on the right hand side where you can bring this information up, so you can have the information on one side of your screen and the question on the other. Identify which one of the following stakeholders has the power to make the decision about which option to invest in. So in all of this, who has the power to make that decision? So the first part of the information we're given tells us that Florence Granger is the sole owner and principal. So therefore, she's going to be the only person that has any power over the decision on where to invest. The next question then asks us which one of the following stakeholders has the greatest interest in the decision about which option to invest in. So who might have the greatest interest then in the decision to invest in one of these? And largely the greatest interest will come from who is it going to affect the most. So we've got teaching staff, administrative staff, Ofsted and cleaners and gardeners. So working from the bottom, the cleaners and gardeners, they're not really going to be affected by the change into the sports hall or the computer facilities. It doesn't impact them to any great degree. Ofsted may well be interested because it may come up as part of an inspection that they've improved their facilities, but at the same time they're not overly interested because as long as you are providing the activities that they require, the newness, the modernness of the facilities may not really be taken into account. The administrative staff, again, they're probably working back office, so they're probably not going to be overly affected by a new sports hall or upgraded computer equipment. So really the people that are going to be affected and that have the greatest interest are the teaching staff. They're the ones that's going to be using the sports hall and the facilities a lot more than anyone else. Finally then, for this part here, so it's identify which one of the following is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. So this is a term that you just need to learn, and the answer to this one is corporate governance. So governance is about how things are directed and controlled, and corporate is about companies and businesses. Complete the following statement about a company's board of directors. So the statement is the board of directors is required to, and then we've got a number of selections there to choose from. We've got contribute capital into the company as individuals, set the company's strategic objectives, and recruit all members of staff. So really, the board of directors, we're not really going to be looking at them at recruiting all members of staff. This is more likely to be done by the department managers, HR, maybe some admin team. It's not going to be done at board level. Directors, they don't have to contribute capital into the company as individuals. They are responsible for just overseeing the company as a whole. But they don't need to actually be owners or shareholders. So then we are left with set the company's strategic objectives, which is the correct answer because the board is going to be looking at how well is the business performing, what can they do in order to improve their performance and make the business more profitable. On to the next part. Sheldon is an accountant in practice. She has been told by her client, Freshino Limited, that she must attend a meeting where Freshino Limited will be trying to raise additional funds by selling shares to investors. Freshino Limited wants Sheldon to speak at the meeting about what a good investment shares in Freshino Limited would be for each investor. The question is, identify how Sheldon's principles are threatened by completing the following statement. So we've got to decide what type of a threat it is and to what is being threatened. So if Sheldon is being asked to speak at the meeting about what a good investment the shares would be in Freshino Limited, it means that she would be showing support to her client publicly. So when we're going to be showing support, it means that we're going to have an advocacy threat, because that's where we are standing up and supporting a client publicly. And this is then going to be a threat to her objectivity. So by showing support for the client, it affects her objectivity because it's within the public domain. The next question, accountants in the UK are required to keep their knowledge up to date and to undertake continuing professional development. Identify which one of the following fundamental principles this protects. So the ones that we're given, so integrity is all about honesty, transparency. Your objectivity is about being unbiased. Professional competence and due care is about knowledge and suitability for the task. And professional behaviour is behaving professionally, so not bringing the profession into disrepute. So out of all of those then, continuing professional development is about keeping their knowledge up to date, so therefore it will be professional competence and due care. Next part then is about identify which two of the following are advantages of a principles-based approach to ethics over a rules-based approach. So the key here is we are looking for two of them to start with. And we've got easy enforcement, applicable to all situations, reduced misunderstanding or misinterpretation, and less chance of people finding loopholes. So with principles then versus rules, that's our other approach that we have available to us. Easy enforcement, well, rules are easier than principles because they have a strict thing to follow. They are there set in stone. So principles are not easier to enforce. Rules are easier. With the principle-based approach, we can apply them to all situations because they can be flexible. Rules sometimes don't suit different situations, but our principle-based approach would. Reduce misunderstandings and interpretation. So we do use principles to actually interpret. So with the principles-based approach, we do have a risk of misinterpretation. And only really with the rule-based approach is that risk reduced. So that is not the correct answer. So then the last one then, less chance of people finding loopholes. As it isn't set in rules, there really aren't any loopholes to find, as it's all about applying to the given situation and then interpreting what that situation means with the principles-based approach. Next part then is to say, for each statement below, identify the safeguard needed to protect professional ethics. Each option can be used only once. So the options are given here, and in the exam you'll be able to drag and drop these into the little boxes. So the first one then is there are poor inventory controls in place which could result in staff stealing computer equipment. So the safeguard that we're going to need for that one is to have disciplinary procedures. So the disciplinary procedures would be in place so that anyone who thought they might steal some stock would know that there would be a consequence to doing that. The second one is, with regulatory changes often occurring in the accountancy profession, there is a risk knowledge may be out of date. So this risk then here is going to be about keeping our knowledge up to date. So this is where we're going to be looking at our continued professional development. And then lastly then for this part is, if a client offers incentives or discounted goods or services to staff, they may override the work schedule to prioritise their work at busy times. So this is about having document access controls. So just making sure that the work can't be overridden by anyone who perhaps isn't authorised just because there is other incentives for the staff member to do so. And then in our final part of the question and final part of task 1, identify in which two of the following situations can an accountant in practice disclose confidential information about a client without the client's express permission. So this is all about your confidentiality and that ethical principle. So the top one here, disclosure is required by law. So this is going to be a situation in which an accountant in practice could disclose confidential information. This could be because evidence needs to be given in a court of law, or it could be when the law has been broken and the authorities need to be informed. Then we've got disclosure is required to comply with the practice's internal policy. Well, that's not a reason to break confidential information. There shouldn't be any internal policies about breaking confidentiality itself. Disclosure is requested verbally by the relevant tax authority. Again, it's not necessary to disclose information to the tax authorities. And then lastly, there is a professional duty or right to disclose. So this could be to protect the professional interests of accountants in legal proceedings. It could be about complying with technical standards and ethical requirements. Or it could be to do with responding to an inquiry by a professional accounting body or regulatory body, perhaps for an ethical, investigatory or disciplinary nature. But overall, we shouldn't be disclosing confidential information unless it's needed legally or there is a professional duty to do so.